Hello, family heads. Welcome to another installment of Family Vacation, the show in between the series. My name is Matt Glass, and today I'm returning to my usual album reviews since it's a new album week. But rather than talk about a band submerged in controversy, we're going to discuss one that seemingly has no backlash whatsoever, but still the accumulated fan base. A band that I've been following for a year or two. We're discussing the Australian jazz fusion soul and R&B group Hiatus Kaiyote. Their newest release, Love Heart Cheat Code, was released in full earlier this summer after what I can only describe as a barrage of singles. It's the band's fourth studio album under Brainfeeder and Ninja Tune and was produced by Brazilian producer Mario Caldato Jr. The band's lineup includes Perrin Moss on drums, Simon Maven on keyboards, Paul Bender on bass, and Naomi Salfield, also known professionally as Napalm, on lead vocals and guitar. Napalm had said the album's title and overall themes derive from an idea that if you move through the world with love, it's the ultimate cheat code to the world. For an album that's only a little over 30 minutes, there's a bit of ground to cover, so let's hop right in. Beginning with musicality. The music on each album has always been the strongest part of the record. The band has always dabbled in psychedelic music and themes in the past. However, on this record, there's a bit more of a symphonic influence that sets it apart from the rest of their discography. Although you still hear the same trippy R&B tone like on tracks 2 and 3, Telescope and Make Friends, you can begin to see a more orchestral feel implemented in their music. Like on track 1 with its angelic harp, Dreamboat, track 5, Everything's Beautiful with the shredding of the flutes, and the clean, sparkly keys flourishing between the left and right channels on track 6, Dimitri. The last point about the album's musicality that I really wasn't expecting was the introduction of a bit of a harsher sound with the last two tracks. Still psychedelic, the last two tracks of the record, Cinnamon Temple and White Rabbit, lean into more of an indie post-punk tone, with the penultimate track, Cinnamon Temple, being the more aggressive approach of the two. I also gotta say, those are some of the heaviest drums I've ever heard from the band yet, which I wasn't expecting. I also wasn't really expecting to use the terms aggressive or heavy when describing this band at all, but I can't say I didn't like it. I'd love to hear more of the sound from the group in the future if they leaned into it more. Enough about that for now, let's move on to production. For such an experimental group, one can only expect production that matches their ambition, and for the most part, I don't have any issues with it. I was a fan of the way the piano was recorded and mixed, where sometimes it would be very clear, like on track 1, Dreamboat, and track 8, How to Meet Yourself, and then heavily dampened, like on the second track, Telescope. The way the synthesizers and guitars also ranged from light and precise to a heavier sounding noise filling in the space definitely kept me on my toes. Another track in regards to production I really wanted to call out for a different reason was track number 7, Long Cat, which is about exactly what the title suggests, since it used drum machine and more futuristic sounding modular synthesizer work. However, I was not the biggest fan of both real and imitated cat noises, but it didn't detract from the overall listening experience. Oh, this actually harks back to another thing I wanted to say about the musicality and the content. One of the songs, I believe it is Telescope, samples My Girl by The Temptations. But let's get on to lyrics. If you couldn't tell by the title and the content of the last track I mentioned, this band expresses a minor sense of humor without it compromising the seriousness of the record. Like their sound, Napalm's lyrics perfectly match the music you hear, with abstract concepts laced into instances of social interaction, more particularly the dating scene. Many of the lyrics on here are also up for interpretation, my favorite being off track number 6, Dimitri, where Napalm sings, "All alone, enamored with a world within a world, do you find we are all amputees of our divination? All alone in the arc of a sympathetic mood, do you find we are all dream aware of its waking?" What I love even more is that a track like Long Cat would come after this. But that's all that I wanted to say about lyrics. Let's talk about vocals. I would say that the vocals are very strong all across the board. Napalm's delivery perfectly sets the vibe of all the music by being smooth and almost free-form. This is both when she's singing lyrics and merely vocalizing. Her contributions on the record include vocal stacking for harmonies that can be heard throughout, and even some minor whistle tones like on track number 5, Everything's Beautiful. One of the big things about this record that I really wanted to talk about for a sec was one of my favorite moments on this album. I was not expecting a bit of a cameo on track number 4, BMO is Beautiful, where the literal voice of BMO from Adventure Time, Nikki Yang, sings an interlude. As a fan of the show, this was a nice surprise. It also kind of adds to the overall vibe of the album too, being very free and silly, yet also just simply comprehending life and the abstract nature of it. Now, I kind of want to talk about some things I didn't like about the album, as I transition in this little in-between stage of vocals and album flow. As I begin to talk about album flow and finish talking about the vocals, I gotta say that my least favorite part of this record is definitely the closer, White Rabbit. I was not a big fan of Napalm's vocal delivery on the Na 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 chorus, with her vocals being super driven in the mix. While I think the band veering towards a more aggressive and blown out sound could be promising in the future, I thought that the execution on the penultimate track, Cinnamon Temple, executed it a lot better, both vocally and production wise. Cinnamon Temple to me read as a post-punk inspired tribute, whereas White Rabbit just felt like some random corporate indie song that you'd hear in a T-Mobile commercial or some other phone service carrier. But I'm going to talk more about album flow. This leads more to my main criticism of the album being a bit more uneven than I would have liked. In terms of genre and tone, I liked the fact that they implemented new ideas, but I couldn't help but feel the album was a tad imbalanced. Most of the album is faithful to the sound of the band that we know from the previous few albums, but I am biased in saying that of the 4 they released, their second album, Choose Your Weapon, is definitely my favorite for its charmingly minor implementation of 8-bit elements. Even though we got a taste of that on Long Cat, I can't help but feel it could have been better on some other tracks too. As much as I love the track BMO is Beautiful, I feel like the opportunity was missed to make that sound more video game-like. This is funny because BMO quite literally is a video game console that Finn and Jake play on. They do commit to the vibe very well on this record for the ones they're trying to set out, but I was a little dissatisfied. That, plus the ending track, kind of made this record shy of a decently higher score. It started off very strong and even has a bit of a 4-track run in the middle, but I don't think it capped off the journey it was pulling us into from the beginning. Otherwise, I'd say the album's pretty solid. Overall, I'd say this record was for the most part expertly done. It didn't really overstay its welcome, and it has a lot of content that I am a fan of. My 3 favorite tracks in this record, in order of least to greatest, are track number 6, Dimitri, track number 2, Telescope, and track number 10, Cinnamon Temple. I also have to slide in track number 9 as an honorable mention. That would be the title track, Love Heart Cheat Code, for the fact that it's kind of a banger, and you can't deny it. I didn't mention it much in this review, but I kind of felt like the other tracks would have illustrated a lot of my points more. And though I didn't love how this album track list was ordered, it was still a worthwhile listen. I would definitely still recommend this to anybody who wants to get into the band. I think all their albums have a taste of them that you would love right off the bat if you're into sort of jazz fusions, psychedelic, and some R&B vocals. I don't think this is the weakest album of theirs either. I'm going to give this a 7.3 out of 10. And we'll most definitely be listening to most of this album on repeat. It's very, very fun. A very solid album by an even more solid band. Well, guys, I hope you enjoyed this little quick review. I was a little constrained on time, so I tried to pick an album that didn't have a lot to cover track list wise. Let us know what other albums you want us to do. DM us at Family Album Pod. Our Instagram is still there. We really need to branch out more. But honestly, that's a quest for a later day. I'm your host, Matt Glass, and AJ, you are on next week. Peace!